Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. Today we have some really awesome tidbits to get through, and we begin with Tales of the Jedi, the upcoming 6-episode animated anthology series that drops in just 20 days time. We've all been anticipating it, more Clone Wars and pre-Clone Wars stories involving Ahsoka, Dooku, Anakin, and yesterday, Lucasfilm began ramping up the marketing for the show. We got a very impressive teaser poster with some of the key characters from the show highlighted around Ahsoka and Dooku in the middle. Ironically, two characters who would both end up not as Jedi. Some noteworthy characters worth speaking about include Mace Windu, Anakin, Bail Organa, Captain Rex, Obi-Wan, Terrace Nube, and my personal favourite, Jedi Master Yaddle. Just look how incredible she looks with her lightsaber. And by the way, this is our first ever canon look at Yaddle with her lightsaber ignited. As you're probably aware, on the channel I've covered pretty much all of Yaddle's non-canon appearances in the Dark Horse comics and various other legend sources, and in those, we've seen her wield a green and sometimes orange lightsaber, but this is the first time in canon, apart from the trailer, where we see her wielding a lightsaber. Now, part of me is very excited, but the other part of me knows that things don't end well for her in this show, and Lucasfilm wanted to use this series to show us how she dies at the hands of Count Dooku. So be it. We know she was no longer in the Jedi Order by the time of Attack of the Clones, so at least we're getting a proper explanation. Now, I've put this forward in a separate video, but my headcanon until Tales of the Jedi debunked it was that Grogu was the reason that Yaddle left the Jedi Order. If she is his mother, then considering he was training at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant at the same time that she was a Jedi Master, then maybe his attachment to her made it impossible for them to both be there, so Yaddle stepped down so his son could train. That was my original theory, but unfortunately, Grogu is not even part of the equation. Maybe someday, in The Mandalorian Season 3 or another season, we'll find out Grogu's lineage. But going back to the poster, a few fans were very surprised to see Terrace Nube highlighted so prominently. We are seeing a lot of him lately, considering his later fate was revealed in the Kenobi show. Maybe he plays a bigger part in the Ahsoka Padawan episodes than we thought. And remember guys, these are 6 short episodes all dropping on the same day, so no time is wasted with the runtimes. They are literally tales in the old literature sense of the word, simple stories that get to the point, tidbits of really important historic events, and in this case, all taking place within the prequel era. And that brings me on to my next point about Tales of the Jedi. A really interesting opinion I've seen posted in a couple of places is that the show should have been about multiple eras, and not just the Clone Wars era. Now, while this era, as well as the pre-Clone Wars era, is popular and a safe bet with fans, the big question is, should they have incorporated more of a broad stroke? Well, it seems as though there is so much to tell within the scope of the prequels, at least these 6 initial episodes, all focus on the build-up to and within that trilogy. But if they do decide to do multiple seasons, or even Tales of the Sith, then perhaps we will see some Old Republic Jedi, High Republic, maybe even New Republic with Luke Skywalker, and even further into the post-sequel timeline. That'd be really interesting, but for now, this is a show very much in the same group of animated series by Dave Filoni that are spin-offs of the Clone Wars like The Bad Batch. I'm super excited for it guys, and I'm very much aware of the fact that many fans are more excited for Tales than the rest of Andor. And speaking of which, let's discuss episode 5. Yesterday it dropped, there were a lot of fan opinions, many of us very much enjoyed it, but whatever you thought, the narrative that Tony Gilroy is telling is really advancing forward. Yesterday I gave my full episode review, as well as something of a breakdown within that. Go and check it out if you haven't done so already, but today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. Before Andor dropped, we were all told by Tony Gilroy that Star Wars animation would play a big role in this show, more specifically Star Wars Rebels. And with that in mind, Andor episode 5 The Axe Forgets did a great job of building up tension for the 6th episode next week. And while there were fewer connections, references, and Easter eggs in this episode, one specific reference made by Dedra Moreau could potentially be way more important than we think, as it connects directly to activity of the Ghost Crew in a beloved episode of Star Wars Rebels Season 1. Let's dive into it. Andor episode 5 sees Cassian Andor and the rest of the Rebel cell on Aldhani make their final preparations for the mission to steal the payroll from the Imperial base. Though the group is fraught with tension, they're not aware that someone at the ISB is becoming increasingly suspicious of seemingly random acts of rebel activity across the galaxy. Dedra Moreau, the ISB agent in question, could spell trouble for Cassian, Mon Mothma, and Luthen, but her suspicions also link the rebel cell on Aldhani with the Ghost Crew. Andor Season 1 is set in 5 BBY, the same year as Season 1 of Star Wars Rebels, but the timeline similarities for both shows do not end there. Both Andor Season 2 and Seasons 2 to 4 of Star Wars Rebels have and will depict the story of the rebellion between 4 BBY and the events of Rogue One, though the execution of both shows is very different, the story of the fledgling rebellion being born all across the galaxy. And while Andor's narrative is way grittier than Rebels, both are equally important in understanding how Star Wars' rebellion operated in its early days, and how the Empire tried to squash it before it could truly thrive. In Andor Episode 5, Dedra Meero complains about rebel activity across the galaxy. As her officer states, the rebel cell's activities are too random to be random, right after he mentions rebel activity on Kessel. Interestingly enough, the 2-episode premiere of Star Wars Rebels Season 1 is titled A Spark of Rebellion, and it details the Ghost Crew's mission to save enslaved Wookiees on Kessel. The Kessel mission really is the starting point for the countless adventures of the Ghost Crew over the course of the 4 seasons. But the reference to Kessel in Andor Episode 5 is no coincidence, and acts as a reminder that everything in Star Wars is connected, and nothing more so than rebellion uprisings across the galaxy. I really hope there are going to be more connections to Star Wars Rebels in this show, and both series operating on the same timeline is a great way to show the development of the rebellion in its early days. Though both series tell their own self-contained narrative, they do provide the audience a deeper understanding of the sacrifices and choices that need to be made in the name of the rebellion, in the name of ending Emperor Palpatine's regime. So who knows, there might be more crossovers to come. And so finally, staying on the subject of Andor, it appears as though the series is playing the long game when it comes to the mystery of Cassian's sister. While it's not been addressed since Episode 3, the theme of lost family appeared once again in Episode 5, notably when Skeen talks about his brother. But the show is approaching Cassian's sister in a very interesting way. Andor as a show is a great departure from the traditional way that Star Wars stories are told. The slow burn of its plot causes it to feel more grounded in the characters and locations, but the lingering question of what happened to Cassian's sister, as well as the rest of the children in their tribe, is a mystery. And while some series would make Cassian's search for Kerry the one and only driving force, Andor makes it an underlying constant on his journey, which makes it ever more interesting. As an audience, we haven't forgotten about it, but it's not really been addressed in a while, and while that can be taking a risk story-wise, Andor finds a beautiful balance, keeping us interested in other plot threads, while having that mystery at the back of our minds. In many ways, the mystery of Kerry's disappearance provides a structure to the show that is rarely seen in other Star Wars projects. Andor's smaller storylines, with less universally damning but still fundamentally gripping stakes, gives the series a unique base that allows viewers to understand the characters like never before. But Cassian's persistent grit is sure to get him the answers he seeks, one way or another, and the great thing is, by the time he gets there, the series will have evolved him to a point where he's ready for answers. Really intriguing stuff, guys. Share your thoughts in the comments down below. What did you make of Episode 5? And over 24 hours later, how are you feeling about the show as we prepare to enter the second half of Season 1? Let me know in the comments below, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, follow me on Twitter at StarWarsMeg1, but I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you always.